Today, we're going to do another video together, me and you the fans, but it's going to be the top 25 hardcore but great JRPGs. Like the ones that are really hard but also really good. Like it doesn't matter how hard they are, you need to play them because they're pretty damn good. So the rules are as follows. Only Japanese role-playing games that came out of Japan. No indie RPGs, like I said before, unless they're Japanese. Number 25, I picked Legend of Legaia. Legaia is a surprising choice for me personally. When I put it on 25, I was like, man, a lot of people are gonna be surprised with this because it's just one of those games that it's like, it doesn't start hard, it starts up balanced, it isn't easy. During the first hours, you notice, okay, this game is not easy, but it isn't that hard either. But it's one of those that the more you advance, the harder it gets. Suffice to say that I never beat it. I got really far into it, but I never beat it. I was like, man, I got so fed up. I was like, man, no, I can't beat this game. It's too hard, but it's too great. And I regret that. So it's hard to come up with the combination attacks to create different combos and different arts, you know, and the enemies are just too difficult. The enemy AI is just too smart. But the story is fantastic. The ambient, the atmosphere of the game is phenomenal. I think it's a really good game. Heavily overlooked nowadays, probably forgotten, but it's there. Number 25, Legend of Legaia. What about you guys? Someone said Redemption Reapers. That's a game that I found it hard. It is hard, I'll give you that, but it wasn't that hard for me personally because, you know, I've been playing strategy RPGs for many years. But yeah, I'll give you that. It's difficult. Redemption Reapers. Dragon Quest II. Dragon Quest II is certainly a very infamous game. It is considered as one of the hardest Dragon Quest games ever made. Okay, so my number 24, I picked Disgaea 4. I needed to include a Disgaea, even though I'm not a big fan of the series. But so Disgaea 4 is a really fun game. The characters are a little bit hard to get used to at the beginning, hard to like, but then you end up loving them. They grow on you. And the battle mechanics are swift, easy to understand, easy to get into, nothing really that convoluted. But the convoluted part comes from its difficulty. That is just it's a little bit of a complex game. All of these Gaia games are like this, precisely to make you use whatever is at your disposal and whatever it is you can get your hands on, you know, to make the battles more easy. But it's so hard to figure out how to operate with the things, the crystals, or you know, I forget the name of those things that you move around to affect the elements and the buffs and debuffs, you know, those things. So it's kind of hard, but it's still a great game and it's still worth playing and putting as many hours as you can. Even if you can't beat the game like I did, it's very worth playing. I think it's I'm not gonna say it's the best Disgaea game because who am I, considering I'm not really a fan of the series. But I think it's a really good game and it's my favorite Disgaea game. So hardcore actually, and great at the same time. What about you guys? Okay, so Mary Skelter 2. Oh, for sure, man. All the Mary Skelter games, pretty much most dungeon crawlers in first person are hard as nails. Okay, Cross Tales, that's a Kemco RPG. That's a strategy RPG. I played the demo, and of course the demo it wasn't easy and it wasn't hard either. But okay, if you say so, you know, I don't have an opinion on that game because I only played the demo. But okay, Cross Tales, that's a Kemco JRPG. Remember, Kemco doesn't develop JRPGs, they just publish them. Wild Arms 1, it's a great game, sure, but I didn't find it hard. But if you did, I guess it counts. Okay. Moving on to my number 23, Exist Archive. Exist Archive, The Other Side of the Sky. This is a game on PS Vita and PS4 and Steam, I believe, developed by Tri-Ace, the creators of Valkyrie Profile and Star Ocean, and Spike Chunsoft, the creators of the Danganronpa series. But it's got nothing to do with Danganronpa. The gameplay mechanics are a bit similar to the Valkyrie Profile games, moving around 2D, platforming, blah blah blah. But the battle system is what matters and what makes things hard. Well, actually, the platforming is also kind of hard too, and infuriating in some areas, but you know, it's just a very challenging game because of its battle mechanics. It's another one like Valkyrie Profile where you get your turn and you click the buttons to make your attacks, but you gotta, you know, decide which attacks to execute first, which character goes first, which ones to use against which enemies. So yeah, it's a very difficult game. It's also a grind fest. It's almost impossible to beat without grinding. I mean, you get under-leveled every few chapters, and it's a bit infuriating, but it's a great game, great music, great character development, great story. So what about you guys? Persona 1 and 2, definitely. I didn't include those on my list, okay? They aren't on my list, but definitely. Persona 1, however, is not great. I strongly disagree with that statement. But to each their own. If you like the game, that's cool. But Persona 2, each version, Eternal Punishment or Instant Sin, great games, stupidly challenging. Persona Q, yeah, both games, specifically the second one. Some nasty spikes are there. Earthbound Beginnings, I've never played it. I know it exists, I know it's there, but I've never played it. No comment, but okay. And of course, Etrian Odyssey. Etrian Odyssey should be like, if you're making your list like easiest to hardest, you should be like on the first places. Okay, so moving on, everybody, let's move on to number 22, and I picked Star Ocean Till the End of Time. I think it's the hardest Star Ocean game. It's hard to break. It has a lot of annoying puzzles. You definitely need a walkthrough for some of them. It has a lot of mandatory, not a lot, just a couple of mandatory kind of like mini games, like riding that freaking ginormous thing. Like in every Star Ocean game, sometimes your characters die too easily in just a few hits, but it just felt like in this game, it was nastier than in the others. However, there are ways around it. I beat the game on the original PlayStation 2, and I realized that after all, it wasn't that stupidly hard, which is the reason why I'm ranking the game this low. Because it's not that stupidly hard, but it's hard nonetheless, right? And it's a great JRPG. I would recommend checking up some hints or some advice online on how to control certain characters and how to make them more powerful, because it is a very challenging game. That's my number 22. What about you guys? Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, absolutely, needs to be there, yeah. Demon Gaze 1 and 2, absolutely. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of dungeon crawlers in first person, but you know what? Demon Gaze 1 and 2 are some of the hardest I have played, up there with Etrian Odyssey. Legaia 2 Dual Saga, naturally. Legaia 1 was on my list, so Legaia 2 is not gonna be on my list because I don't think it's great, but if you think it's great, then there you go. Someone's saying Xenoblade Chronicles. Well, yeah, it's valid because the original version was very hard, and I don't remember it having an easy mode. Of course, Strange Journey, another dungeon crawler infamous for being challenging. And the 7th Saga, although that game is not that great because it's freaking broken, but it is one of the hardest JRPGs of all time, especially the Western version, the localized version. Anyway, everybody, let's move on to number 21. I picked Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, and I'm pretty sure anybody who has played that game will agree. No difficulty settings, it's very challenging, it's very hard, and it's a remake of the original Famicom version. A lot of people don't know that. They look at Shadow Dragon and, oh, it's that game with Marth. Well, guess what? That's a full remake of the very first Fire Emblem ever made. Why is it very challenging? Probably because it's a remake of a game that came out in 1990, and they probably wanted to stay true to the original in that regard, because the original is stupidly hard too. So I guess that's the reason why they didn't rebalance the difficulty, but it's still a great game, and it gets overlooked and overshadowed. It got a lot of trash when it came out because of the art style, but you know, I didn't find the art style that ugly. That's just my opinion. I think it's fine, and I think it's a wonderful game. What about you guys? Number 21. Final Fantasy IV in Nintendo DS. Ooh, yeah. It's infamous for being the hardest version of Final Fantasy IV. Suikoden Tactics? Legit. I don't think it's that hard. Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monster Coliseum. Oh, I can't make any comment on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games because I'm not a fan of those. I did play that game actually. It's a strategy RPG, and I didn't know it was that challenging, so okay. Lost Odyssey. Lost Odyssey is a fantastic masterpiece, but it only has like a couple of difficulty spikes in there. But yeah, I guess you could say because of those difficulty spikes, it could be here, but I don't see it as hardcore. And finally, Pokemon Gale of Darkness XD for the GameCube. You know I'm not a fan of Pokemon, so I have no opinion on that, but thanks for bringing it up. And my number 20, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2. Massive grind fest, extremely challenging, especially for people like me who kind of suck at action RPGs. If you're really good at them, you might not find them hard, and you might find this decision questionable, but it's my list, and I'm pretty bad, and these games do not have any difficulty settings. That's right. Oh yeah, they are, they're just there, you just jump into them, you can't change, no easy mode, no hard mode, no, just stuck with whatever standard difficulty, and at the beginning they're kind of easy. You play the first couple of missions and they're like, yeah, they're fine. You know, that's why that's what makes this game so great, because they hold your hand at the beginning, and then little by little they start getting more challenging, especially because you're fighting hordes of enemies. I haven't played a single Warriors-like game that isn't like hard, or it doesn't get harder the more you advance, precisely because, you know, fighting hordes of enemies, I mean, that very same idea is difficult to start with. You're fighting a shit ton of enemies at the same time, right? And the bosses are ridiculous. Dragon Quest Heroes 2, some of the bosses, oh man, stupidly, ridiculously hard. But yeah, the games are fantastic, and they're action RPGs. You might think, oh, then you're gonna mention every Warriors game as an action RPG. No, some Warriors games are not really RPGs. These ones are, because you got a town, you got a base of operations, you buy things, you level up, you grind, you talk to characters, you accept side quests, you do everything you do in regular JRPGs. So yeah, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2, definitely recommend it, but you know, be warned, they're pretty challenging. What about you guys? Is 6 the Odin Felgana? Or E6 or the Odin Felgana. Both of them, actually, you know, I got a couple of East games on my list. God Wars, Future Past, The Complete Legend. Believe it or not, that's also one of those games that starts off really stupidly easy and then slowly starts getting ridiculous. I never beat the game. Okay, everybody, moving on to number 19. I picked Trails in the Sky the Third. The only Trails game in the entire series. In fact, I think it's the hardest Trails game. The game is pretty much a dungeon crawler, not in first person, no, you can see the characters moving around, but it's pretty much one of those games where you just traverse a dungeon, fight challenging enemies, and then fight a challenging boss. And the last several bosses are like some of the special bosses. Jesus Christ! I confessed I had to put the game on easy mode for those bosses, and they still gave me trouble. It's not that challenging, okay? It's not that hardcore. But if I had to pick what I personally consider as the hardest Trails game, it needed to be that. You probably wonder, hey, so about that game, Eric, it didn't come out on PlayStation 4 or anything, did it? No. It only came out of Japan on Steam. So, and I don't play on Steam, so I'm kind of cheating here because I played the Japanese fan-translated version on the PlayStation Vita, and I said no only in Japan games, but the game's on Steam, so it still counts. Yeah, it's not exactly a boss rush, but you do find a lot of challenging bosses. The whole point of the game, it's a game that focuses way more on the gameplay and the fighting than on the narrative and the story. And there's barely any simulation, you know, there's no towns, nothing of the sort, just one large dungeon, and yeah, hardcore. What about you guys? Dragon Quest VII, definitely a game. You're talking about the original PS1 version, right? Phantasy Star 2. Thank you for bringing that game up. Definitely, man. One of the hardest games on the Sega Genesis. God Eater 3. I didn't include any single God Eater game in my list, but I came this close of including one of them. I was like, which one should I include? Oh, all three are hard. But in my opinion, you picked the easiest. It's still very challenging, but you picked the easiest. Resurrection and Rage Burst are much more challenging in my opinion, but they're all great games, so yeah, definitely a great pick. Legend of Dragoon? Okay, man. Yeah, it's challenging, especially near the end, so maybe you have a point. Xanadu Next, no opinion because I never played it. Xenogears. I did consider Xenogears even though I didn't find it that challenging, but that was a long time ago, so who knows, you might have a point. So moving on to my number 18, I picked Grandia 3. I know a lot of you are not gonna find that game that challenging. Grandia 3 is one of the most underrated JRPGs of all time because it got a lot of undeserved hate. Sure, the story wasn't as great as in the first two games, especially the second game, but it was still interesting. The characters were still interesting. There were some annoying things here and there, sure, but I don't know, I just don't see the criticism for this game. It doesn't deserve the hate, and it's a beautiful looking game. It's got the best battle system in the entire series, but it's just ridiculous hard, man. It's a grind fest, and there are a few spikes here and there, and yes, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, give this game a chance, guys. Please, I know it's exclusive on the PS2, but I think it came out digitally on PlayStation 3, so you can play it there. Hopefully one day we'll see it remastered, but yeah, this game is strongly recommended. It's my favorite Grandia game, and it doesn't deserve the hate, but yeah, be warned, it's pretty damn challenging. So what about you guys? Dungeon Travelers 2, another dungeon crawler, so of course, I haven't played it, but all I know is that it's really sexualized. Yeah, Rogue Galaxy. It needed to be mentioned. It's not on my list, but it just needed to be mentioned. Freaking massive, super hard game. Zelda 2. Okay, it's valid. There's a lot of people who consider that game as a role-playing game. I don't, but I can see the RPG elements. But can we all agree the game is great and hardcore? Number 17, Dragon Quest 8. Oh yeah. So Dragon Quest 8 is my pick. I don't know if the 3DS version is just as challenging. If you played it, please share your opinion in the chat right now or in the comments section later on. But my point is that game on the PS2, holy crap. Holy crap. Why is that game so hard? It was supposed to be a game for everybody, for anybody to jump into the series, and no. From the first mission, the first boss of the game, you die miserably and there are no save points in the dungeons. Most Dragon Quest games from like 8, from this game and before, they didn't have any save points inside the dungeons. You traverse the entire dungeon, you die at the boss, it's back at the freaking beginning. And this game, I never beat it. I got lost and I died so many times at the final dungeon that I never made it to the final boss. I gave up. And I grinded a lot, and I grinded the golems for money to buy the best equipment, and I still couldn't beat it. Really challenging game, Dragon Quest 8, but can we all agree it's one of the best Dragon games ever made? Level 5, damn man, what a fantastic game. Oh yeah. So that's my number 17. What about you guys? The Lost Child, another dungeon crawler in first person. Dragon Slayer, The Legend of Heroes, definitely. Final Fantasy Type 0, definitely. I didn't like that game, so I don't think it's great. I disagree on that. So moving on to my number 16. Get ready, everybody. I picked the hardest Tales ever made, in my opinion, and that is, of course, Tales of Graces F. Came out on the Wii. We didn't get it, and then we got the PS3 version, the brutal version. That's a game that even on easy mode, it's gonna wreck your balls. That's a stupidly hard game, because the battle system in Tales of Graces is not like in the others. You can't just hack and slash or button mash your way through. You gotta create these combos, and then all of these combos have a cooldown, and if you attack too much, you can't attack. But Graces was like really technical. You gotta think what you're gonna do, how you're gonna fight, how you're going to approach the enemy. The bosses are ridiculously hard, most of them. I can think of at least 20 that are ridiculous. The Sirens, for example, the Sirens. When you fight the Sirens, man, I remember having to grind a lot just for that battle. But I succeeded. Sure, I bet I beat the game on easy, but trust me, beating that game even on easy mode is a feature. Okay, it's an achievement. Number 16, what about you guys? Mega Man Battle Network 4. Okay, haven't played that game. Come on, guys. Shin Megami Tensei 1, it was officially translated on mobile. Is that the version you played? I played the original Super Famicom version, and I never got far because, yeah, the game didn't age well. I don't think it's a great game, but if you think it is, that's respectable. So number 15 is Origin. Oh yeah, that's another game that just like Tales of Graces. Even on easy mode, I got my ass handed back to me. And actually, you can watch my full playthrough of it online. It's live, it's public, and I did a full playthrough with Unica only. And Unica is harder than the other guy, Hugo. Hugo is kind of on the easy side because he's a bit broken, but it's still kind of challenging. But Unica, she's the hack and slash part of the game. But yeah, some really challenging bosses, some really challenging enemies, some really challenging platforming, some really challenging puzzles. Everything about that game is challenging, but it's an old Ys game. This is one of the many Ys games prior to the Ys 7 era, because Ys 7 came about and changed everything from the Ys series. They made it more balanced, you had party members and whatnot. But yeah, before that game came out, most of the Ys games were like ridiculous, and Ys Origin is no exception. Stupidly challenging game, and even on easy mode. What about you guys? Crystalis. Yes, thank you for bringing that game up. It's great, it aged kind of decently, and it's ridiculous for Christ's sake. Xenosaga Episode 2. That's a great pick, man. Fantastic game, criminally overlooked, gets a lot of hate, but it's just stupidly hard. Why is someone saying Kingdom Hearts 3? Okay, I'm not gonna judge you because I only played that game for like 30 minutes, so maybe it is as hard as you say. But I'm curious, you know. Kingdom Hearts 2, though! Oh my god! Or the first one, even. So, number 14, Spectral Souls on the PSP. My god. Isn't that the biggest grindfest ever? More grindy, probably, than Breath of Fire 2, Miracle Warriors, which is pretty bad. Yeah. Pretty damn hard game, man. And, it's a massive grind fest. If you haven't played this game, you have no idea what the meaning of grinding is. You're gonna be spending more than half of the game just grinding, but it's worth it because phenomenal story, phenomenal writing, different protagonists. You can switch between each protagonist, you know, at any given time to advance the story. Sometimes you'll be locked into one character until you beat their mission, and then you move on to the next one, and the final boss is ridiculous. And yeah, really challenging game, guys. Spectral Souls, very overlooked, hidden gem. Check it out if you can. It's also on mobile devices, I think, and on Steam. So that's my number 14. What about you guys? Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. Okay, no comment because I barely played that game. I didn't like it. Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmeria, absolutely. I strongly disagree with Tales of Exilia. I think that's one of the easiest Tales games, but wait a second, if you play Tales of Exilia on normal mode, okay, yeah, you might have a point, but I think Exilia 2 is harder. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Shining Resonance Refrain, up to you, man. I didn't think the game was great, so I didn't pick it for my video, but it's definitely stupidly difficult and unfair and cheap and... Vagrant Story, it needed to be mentioned. Number 13, Octopath Traveler. It needed to be here. What do you expect? The game is phenomenal, and the game is phenomenally hard! This game needs no introduction, no explanation, everybody knows it's a grindfest. It's inspired by the Saga series, so yeah, it had to be here, right? Octopath Traveler, freaking grindfest, freaking difficult, but it's so worth it, so addictive to play. What else can I say about a game that's extremely popular, sold millions of copies, and everybody and their mom has played it? So what about you guys? Romancing Saga 2? I played the PS Vita version. Okay, with those games got a remaster 2 and 3, right? And yeah, Romancing Saga games, all of them, every single one of them. Final Fantasy 3 on the Nintendo DS. Thank you. You made my day, man. That game is not on my list, but I was afraid to bring that game up because it is very freaking challenging. Oninaki. It's challenging, especially if you play on normal or hard. Hard is impossible. Normal is gonna kick your ass. It's great. Yeah, definitely hardcore, man. Great pick, Oninaki. Moving on to number 12. Well, believe it or not, I picked Suikoden 3. First, because it's the hardest Suikoden game, in my opinion. I'm a diehard of the series, so I'm knowledgeable. I know what I'm talking about, and I found that game to be the hardest of them all. Suikoden 3. Not because the game itself is difficult, it's just there's a crap ton of really nasty spikes in some bosses. Like the one against the bad guys in Luke's era, and all the bad guys all at once. And you got these under-level characters. And I mean, what can I say? It's ridiculously hard. It's another one later on with against a boss with some crystals. That can actually be defeated easily with Vicky. But yeah. Suikoden 3 is the hardest of them all, and it's a really hard game, but I freaking love it, and it gets a lot of undeserved hate, but I'll admit it didn't age very well. That's all I'm gonna say. Hopefully it'll be remastered just like 1 and 2. That's all I'm gonna say. What about you guys? Suikoden 2? Okay. Devil Survivor? Of course! Of course! Anything from Shin Megami Tensei! Or anything. Path of Radiance. Yeah, it's challenging, but I already picked Shadow Dragon, so yeah. But I'll give it to you. Path of Radiance is not an easy game, and it's a masterpiece, but I don't think it's that hard. And Tactics Ogre, of course. I was gonna pick Tactics Ogre, but yeah, Tactics Ogre, any version, excruciatingly hard and difficult. Definitely, man. Grandia Extreme, I don't think it's a great game, but if you liked it that much, it's definitely the hardest Grandia game, so great pick, man. Moving on to my number 11. Are you ready? That's gonna have to be Star Ocean: The Second Story. Oh yeah, another Star Ocean game. You gotta understand where I'm coming from. I'm talking about the original PS1 version that I never broke, that I beat only once. The second playthrough I couldn't defeat it. It was just so difficult. It's a really hard game. Why is it so hard? I think it's because the enemies are really smart and they can gang up on you. That's one of the most important reasons why Star Ocean: The Second Story is so difficult. Both versions, even the remake is just as hard, but there are easier ways to break the remake. And I broke it, and I didn't really suffer through its difficulty because I broke it early, right? But yeah, if you don't know how to break Star Ocean 2, even the remake, it's gonna be just as challenging as the original. In fact, maybe even harder, because the enemies have now these shields that you're supposed to break to actually do some proper damage. And that wasn't in the original versions. That's a new feature of the remake. So yeah, it's a hard game no matter what. But it's phenomenal. Any version, it's a fantastic game, especially the remake. What about you guys? Star Ocean: The Last Hope. All the Star Ocean games could be here. Star Ocean 4 is kind of unbalanced, actually. Some nasty spikes here and there, some easy bosses. It's kind of like, every now and then it gets hard. We are down to the top 10, everybody. And my number 10, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Even the remaster. I broke the remaster because there's a merciful mode which is stupidly easy, and you can just grind on it and get overpowered and then go back to normal or hard and beat the game normally like you're supposed to do. It's still challenging. Don't think I broke the game and made it my bitch and made it stupidly easy. No. I just wanted to get to the right level and get the right demons so I could face off against these really difficult bosses, and they were still hard because I beat them all in normal mode. But the fact is that it's a stupidly hard video game, man. And what else can I say? It's worldwide known for being hard, but there are ways around it, right? You can break it. And just as an honorable mention for me right now, I don't want to put too many SMT games on the list. Shin Megami Tensei 5. That's my personal honorable mention. I really wanted to include it on the list because it's phenomenal, it's a masterpiece, and it's also really hard. But I don't want too many SMT games on my list. What about you guys? Monster Hunter World? No opinion because I haven't played it. Neo. I don't know much about the Neo games. I know they're kind of inspired by the Soul series. Final Fantasy Tactics. Definitely. Yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics is a really popular game and everybody loves it and whatnot. But the fact remains, it's a really hard game. So yeah. Muramasa the Demon Blade? Sure, why not? It's kind of challenging, it's fantastic, but it wasn't that hard for me, but it's hard nonetheless, so yeah. And finally, Vandal Hearts. Yeah, it's challenging, especially the second game, right? The second game, oh my god, but the second game isn't great. The first one is a fantastic game. It's challenging, not that challenging in my opinion, but challenging nonetheless. I'll give you that. Moving on to my number 9. Somebody already mentioned this game, but Grow Lancer 4. It had to be on my list, right? Aren't I the biggest Grow Lancer nerd out there? And what's the hardest Grow Lancer by far of the series? Grow Lancer 4. I've talked about this game plenty of times, and I've complained about it. I also have some kind of love-hate relationship with it, but I think my love for it is far greater than my hatred. And my hatred only comes because it's so hard, because some missions have these really impossible requirements, really difficult requirements, but you gotta be smart. You can't just grind your way through and beat it. Well, okay, I guess if you grind a lot, you can beat any mission in this game, but some missions require you to think what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, and what you're supposed to equip, okay? Like some missions where you gotta be faster than a certain other character, like a certain boss, and prevent that character from leaving. Or the flags mission, which is ridiculous. You gotta defend these flags and not let enemy soldier, get close to it. And they can just destroy the flags in like a few hits. And if you destroy only one, it's pretty much, I think, game over. Well, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But the fact is that this game is just, man. What about you guys? What's your number 9? Alondra, definitely. Alondra specifically, it's control-wise, action battle-wise, it's difficult, just not that difficult, but the puzzles are ridiculous. And about time somebody mentioned Dark Souls. I don't like the game one bit, but yeah, it had to be in this video. Drakengard 3. The entire Drakengard trilogy, man. Thanks for bringing those games up. Eternal Poison, yeah, I didn't include it on my list because I'm not sure. I've beaten that game so many times that I'm not sure if it's hard or not, but I remember it being challenging and it's phenomenal, so great mention, man. Eternal freaking Poison. My number 8, everybody, is another Ys game, and that is Ys the Oath in Felghana. Somebody already mentioned it, thank you. It was between this one and Napishtim, but I never beat the Ark of Napishtim. I beat the Oath in Felghana, and I had to beat it on easy because the North American version was just ridiculous. And why am I mentioning the North American version? For one simple reason, the PAL version is ridiculously easy. Sure, the PAL version, if you stick to normal mode, halfway through is gonna start getting challenging. But the North American version on normal mode, it's hardcore from the start! Like what the hell, not even Ys Origin. Ys Origin, you beat the first bosses without too much trouble, but the first boss in Oath in Felghana, what the hell? Even on easy mode, it's just ridiculous. Hardest Ys game ever made, man. Jesus Christ, the Oath in Felghana. What about you guys? What's your number 8? Okay, Wild Arms Crossfire, I didn't think it was great. I think it's kinda bad, but it's very challenging. Warsong, the Mega Drive one, or the Genesis one, definitely. What a joke of a game. It's just it's impossibly hard. It needed to be one on the top 10, man. Yeah, definitely. Resonance of Fate, about time somebody mentioned it. Even though I'm not a fan, that's why it's not on my list. But Resonance of Fate needed to be mentioned sooner or later, so there you go. Just like the Last Remnant. Tough bastards, both of them. I don't like them, but I know they have a lot of fans, so there you go. And finally, Persona 3 FES. Well, yeah, that's a game that I suggest you play on easy. Don't be ashamed. It's just in normal mode, it's so fucking hard. It's so ridiculously hard because of the fact that you can't control your party members, right? Number 7 is Code Vein, and someone just mentioned it. Yeah, Code Vein, how can I leave it out? It's ridiculously hard. I picked it over the God Eater series or any Souls game because it's the only Souls-like game that I actually love passionately. Man, Code Vein, ridiculously hard. One of the hardest things about Code Vein that doesn't get criticized or brought up as often is the labyrinths. Everybody knows it's a hard game because it's inspired by Souls, and you need to be specific with the bosses and the enemies, and any enemy can kill you in like a few hits if you're careless. But one of the hardest things about Code Vein is some of the labyrinths. The church. The freaking church, man. How can anybody forget that? It's a freaking labyrinth. a labyrinth, and it's so hard to get out and to traverse. There you go. So it's not only hard in terms of battle system, it's also hard in terms of exploration. What about you guys? Yakuza Like a Dragon? Yeah, actually, you have a point. There's a couple of really nasty spikes. It is hardcore and it is very good. Somebody just mentioned Digital Devil Saga. Yep, and he also said especially for its convoluted dungeons. Yep, you just beat me, man. I said some of the dungeons in Code Vein were convoluted. You can't beat Digital Devil Saga. It's one of the masters of horrible dungeons. Okay, my number 6, somebody already mentioned it like 5 seconds ago, and that's Eternal Sonata, the PS3 version. Not the 360 version. I think the 360 version is easier, and it shouldn't be in anyone's list. But the PS3 version, which is the complete version, is hardcore. But can I say something about it? I only included that game on the list for 2 reasons. Why? One, because it's phenomenal, it's a masterpiece, so it needed to be here and high on the list. But I also my second reason for including it is because of the internet. You see, I don't think the game is that hard, and in terms of difficulty, it probably should have been ranked lower on my list. But I think a lot of people complain about it because it has some nasty bosses and nasty spikes. And it's hard to understand, kind of hard to get into, but I still think it's a masterpiece. Everybody should play it. And just pay attention to what you're doing during battle, man. And that's it. It's not that hard to understand, not that hard to break, not that hard to master. That's one of the very few JRPGs in existence that everybody says it's hard, and I don't. But it's hard nonetheless, okay? I admit that, so it needed to be mentioned. Eternal Sonata, number 6. What about you guys? Elden Ring, okay. Yeah, needed to be mentioned, right? Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen on the Super Nintendo. Also on PS1, by the way. I think the PS1 version was harder. Yeah. Final Fantasy XII, enough said. Thanks, man. Especially the original version. Asher Dreams. That's one of those roguelike RPGs, right? You explore a tower with different floors, and then you move. If you move, the enemy moves. Yeah, I think it's still an exclusive on the PlayStation. I'm not sure if it got released digitally anywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. That's a great game, and because of its nature, like 9 out of 10 roguelike RPGs, it's stupidly hard. So yeah. Did someone say Baroque? Come on! Tales of Vesperia, because other than Grace's F with its technical combat, Vesperia has the highest skill ceiling. You're right. I've seen a lot of people complaining about Tales of Vesperia on normal, even on normal mode. We're down to the top 5. And my number 5 is yet another Fire Emblem. One of the hardest, if not the hardest that came out of Japan, ignoring the only in Japan games, and that is of course Radiant Dawn on the Wii. Okay, let me explain to you, in case you don't know already, why that game is so stupidly hard. It's because the localization team from Nintendo messed up. They made a mistake. Okay, there was only originally a normal mode and a hard mode. There is no easy mode in Japan. So when they localized the game, they messed it up. Yep, they changed the names to easy and normal. So a lot of people naturally play that game on normal mode, when in reality they didn't know they were playing on hard mode. So that's why the game got so infamously hard. But guess what? It's even hard on easy, which is the normal mode. Yeah. One of the reasons why this game is so challenging is because of its map design. You often get to fight hordes of enemies like in any Fire Emblem game, but I felt that even on normal mode the enemy AI was a little bit smarter than usual, and there are some specific areas where they hoard you. They gangbang you in there, and you got these vulnerable characters that sometimes in some missions you need to protect or save quickly, and it's so hard to get there in time, right? And that's why this game, even on normal mode, which is easy, on easy mode, which is normal, you get the idea, it's still freaking hard. That's my number 5. What about you guys? Bravely Default 2 on the Switch? Okay, I didn't know it was that hard. Shining Force 2? You know what, I was thinking about the Shining Force games, and I did consider them for this video where I was like, man, they aren't that hard. They're fantastic though, but yeah, I've always felt like Shining Force 2 was much harder than the first one. Especially some missions are ridiculous. This guy, yeah, obviously, the first one, legendary. Arc Rise Fantasia on the Wii. Definitely. Moving on to my number 4. Well, I picked Octopath Traveler 2. Octopath Traveler 2's biggest difference, as opposed to the first one, is that for the majority of the game, it's nowhere near as hard. And you're gonna experience that. If you play both games, you're gonna be like, oh my god, they finally rebalanced things. It's more balanced, it's easier, it's still challenging. Do not underestimate Octopath Traveler 2. And the final boss, the one that's actually the final boss, not just of one character, of all the characters, the true final boss, ridiculous. That's when you start getting Octopath Traveler 1 Deja Vu. That's when you start getting some vibes in there. You get to near the end of the game and you're like, I was wrong. It's just as big of a grind fest as the first one. Number 4, what's yours? Wolong Fallen Dynasty. I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. Scarlet Nexus, I have mixed feelings. Well, you know what? Okay, I played it on easy because it was on normal mode, it was just too brutal for me. So you have a point. Yeah, Scarlet Nexus, man, too brutal. My number 3, I picked Valkyria Chronicles, the first one. Masterpiece! I love that game passionately, man, but I'll admit, it's just too challenging. And it was challenging for me too. It's also kind of like Eternal Sonata. I don't think it's as hard as some people make it out to be, but I'll admit, it's hard nonetheless. Why is it so hard? Again, because of the map design, because of the requirements, because of what you need to do. Sometimes it's just kill all enemies, find the better strategy, capture the base, and that's it, right? Easy, right? But in some other missions, you only have like 2 characters and you need to like be really careful, and if you die, it's game over. In others, you gotta destroy a specific tank that's heavily guarded. In others, I could go on, okay? But that's also what makes Valkyria Chronicles so damn good, because you're there, addicted to it, trying to figure out what to do and how to complete this mission. A phenomenal game, guys, but it is hardcore now, no matter what you say. What's your number 3, everybody? Cross Edge? Why are you ranking that game so high? I mean, the game is hard. Yes, it is very hard, but it's not that great. Well, I guess some of you are ranking your games from easiest to hardest, right? Not necessarily from worst to best, which is similar to what I did. Okay, Cross Edge, I'll give you that. The game's great. Not that great, but it's hard. Dragon's Dogma, not really a strong opinion on that game because I barely played it, but I've heard that it's great, that it's fantastic, and it's also quite challenging. And finally, someone says Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade. Yeah, actually, you're right. Number 2, Devil Survivor. Come on, you saw this coming. It needed to be in my list. It's my favorite SNT game. Brutally hard, specifically the Nintendo DS version. The 3DS version is very challenging too. Do not underestimate the 3DS version overclocked, but the Nintendo DS original version, it's an excellent game, but it's, oh man, the memories. That mission where you gotta protect Midori from killing herself. The fight against the cops, the one where you gotta prevent this vampire from running away, and the boss battle, the legendary boss battle, the first major boss of this game. Stupidly, insanely hard. It should have been one of the last bosses, not the first one! The guy that's immune to every single attack, and you can only attack with a special attack your character has. His demons cannot do anything. All you can do is endure the onslaught while you slowly take him down with your protagonist. I mean, wow, making the first major boss of the game this ridiculously hard. That's why Devil Survivor is so high on my list, but it's also because it's a masterpiece. Just like Valkyria Chronicles, it's just so addictive to play. It forces you to think. It rewards you with a fantastic story, with a demon summoning program, with an excellent combat, excellent music. What else is there to say? What about you guys? Why are you mentioning Final Fantasy X-2? Isn't that the worst JRPG of all time? Okay, no it isn't, but no, that's unacceptable. Phantom Brave. Okay, the game isn't that great. I didn't really like it that much, but it's really freaking challenging. Once again, someone's mentioning Etrian Odyssey, and once again, someone's mentioning the 7th Saga. They've been mentioning those since the beginning. Number 1, you guys ready for my number 1? Of course, I had to pick my second favorite JRPG of all time, Valkyrie Profile 2. It's not only a masterpiece deserving of the first place, it's also legendary and considered as one of the hardest JRPGs of all time. No matter the platform, no matter the genre, no matter the generation, it's extremely difficult. But it's a blast trying to get into it. It's a blast trying to figure out the battle mechanics. It's a blast trying to exploit the equipment system, the accessory system. It's just one of those games that I ended up breaking, but I broke it near the end. I suffered through it. The final boss was ridiculous. It took me many tries on my first playthrough to defeat. Ridiculous game, man. But ridiculously hard, but also ridiculously good. That's my number 1, everybody. It needed to be my number 1. I know it was predictable, but it just needed to be. Hard and great JRPGs, that's the poster child for me. What about you guys? Astral Chain! Yes, solid pick. It's a really difficult game. Baten Kaitos 1 and Origins. Great picks. Very challenging games. Excellent, especially the first one. Someone saying Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. Definitely hard. Not deserving of the first place because the game isn't great in my opinion, but if that's your opinion. And Xanadu. Released 2 days ago on Switch with English. Okay, I didn't know that. Nice. Devil Survivor 2. No one's gonna bring that game up, right? Actually, the first one is harder, but the second game is also a masterpiece deserving in the first place. So that's my own personal honorable mention, Devil Survivor 2. Anyway, guys, that's it. We have completed together a top 25. Oh yeah, I had a blast. I hope you had a blast too. And it's time for you to fill the comment sections with your own top 25 or top 15 or top 5 or top 10. Choose your list. Put your list in the comments. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!